In this lecture, we will be examining the Compromise of 1850 and its effects on antebellum American history. The debate over the admittance of new slave states brought a number of leading American political figures to the podiums in Congress to debate the issue. The Compromise of 1850 began in 1849 with the newly acquired territory of California wishing to be admitted as a free state. This was in part driven by the California gold rush, which propelled the population of California far beyond the minimum number of people needed to seek admittance as a state. This admittance, much like the earlier example of Missouri in 1820, would upset the balance between free and slave states. To resolve the issue, Henry Clay created a series of resolutions he wished to be adopted by Congress. However, after 7 months of debate in the Senate, his legislative package was voted down. Then Stephen A. Douglas came up with the idea of taking Clay's resolutions and sending them individually through Congress as separate pieces of legislation. Noted slavery proponent John C. Calhoun was too ill to deliver his speech on the proposed compromise, so his speech was read by another senator with Calhoun present in the Senate chamber. Calhoun, in fact, had to be helped out of the chamber after the speech, and the senator died shortly thereafter. His admirers like to claim that he died for the defense of slavery. In his speech, Calhoun warned senators that they needed to take steps to make sure that Southerners could stay in the Union, as he put it, with their honor and their safety unharmed. This was seen as a thinly veiled threat of secession. Daniel Webster viewed slavery as a matter of historical reality as opposed to a moral issue. He argued that the issue of slavery's existence in the American territories had long ago been put to rest when Congress outlawed slavery in the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, and also when Congress divided sections of the United States into slave and free states in the 1820 Missouri Compromise. Webster argued that slavery, where it existed, could not be prohibited, but at the same time, slavery could not be permitted in the newly acquired southwestern territories. William Henry Seward argued for what he referred to as freedom in the new territories in his famous speech. Southern slavery proponents had long contended that the Constitution alone provided sufficient justification for the extension of slavery in the new territories. Seward admitted that the Constitution recognized the existence of slavery and that it protected slavery where it existed, but he argued that new territories were ruled by, as he put it, a higher law than the Constitution. This was a moral law crafted by the creator of the universe, as he referred to God. Seward held that slavery was doomed and that secession from the Union would be both pointless and treason. The Compromise of 1850, then, was a collection of 5 laws whose passage was coordinated by Stephen A. Douglas. The Compromise permitted the admittance of California as a free state. It allowed the territories of New Mexico and Utah to be organized by popular sovereignty. The law set the current boundaries for the state of Texas as they are now, with the exception of a small slice of the panhandle that ended up going to the future state of Oklahoma. The existing fugitive slave law became much tougher, and finally the Compromise of 1850 ended the slave trade in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., where there had been a lively and thriving trade in the sale of human beings. Many components of the Compromise of 1850 directly contradicted the 1820 Missouri Compromise. This led to significant anger among many Northerners who feared this was really an attempt to expand slavery and the power of Southern slave states. This map shows the status of states and territories prior to the enactment of 1850. This next map shows the states and territories of the U.S. in the changes related to the Compromise of 1850. So between 1850 and March of 1853, the so-called Mexican Cession was organized during this compromise. It was split between the Utah Territory and the New Mexico Territory. Then another section became the state of California. These two territories also included a portion of Texas, which was ceded to the federal government. You can look back and forth between the maps to see the difference. A small slice of Texas plus the Mexican cession became unorganized land. And in March of 1853, the Washington Territory was split off from the Oregon Territory. This final map shows how the United States evolved into a country containing two competing social and economic systems in the decade leading up to the Civil War. Stephen Douglas hoped that the compromise legislation would reduce the rising political divisiveness between North and South. However, the push by Stephen Douglas to organize the Kansas and Nebraska territories for statehood only worsened the sectional divide between free and slave states. And a critical question remained unanswered. Would the new states of Kansas and Nebraska permit slavery, or would they outlaw the practice?